Hello, everyone. Welcome. Today, our topic is how to modify an exercise and whether it's a single exercise or an exercise routine. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So, when it comes to improving our functional movements for day-to-day activities like walking, stair climbing, getting in and out of the bed, in and out of car, in and out of a shower, anytime we have to step over something, up on a curb, we need to use our hip flexor strength, as well as lots of other things. But for our sake right now, let's go with hip flexor strength. So we need to be able to use our hip flexors. One of my favorite exercises, and if you're a client of mine, you know this, one of my favorite exercises for hip flexor strength is marching. And I'm about to demonstrate that for you. But it's important to know how to modify, because if you don't have success with the marching exercise, and that might just mean it feels too challenging, it's too fatiguing, it's not going well, and maybe even you have zero movement, which is very common. If you have MS and you have one leg that's weaker than the other, you might be able to march with one leg, but the other leg does absolutely nothing. Or it lifts, but just a little bit, a fraction of what the other side lifts. So what do you do in that case? First of all, it's important that you still do the exercise. I can't stress that enough. Even if you have zero movement or a fraction, like literally a centimeter of movement, that is not an excuse to not do the exercise. The only way to get that muscle stronger is by activating that muscle, or at the very least, activating that neural pathway. And we talk a lot in lots of areas about neuroplasticity. That's that. But that's not the point for today. So today we're talking about modification. So I'm going to demonstrate a modification for lots of different positions for the marching exercise. And what I want you to take away from this is not only the position changes, but also that all of these exercises strengthen my hip flexors. They're going to look different because for some I'll be standing, for some I'll be sitting or lying down, but they all strengthen my hip flexors. And when it comes to MS, the most important thing is that you're choosing the variation, you're choosing the option that feels easiest to you and that you are most successful with. Because if it feels easiest, you'll be able to do more repetitions with good quality. And the more repetitions you do with good quality, the more opportunities you're giving your brain and therefore neuroplasticity to strengthen those neural pathways, which will then strengthen the muscles. So there's no shame in picking the easiest one. You shouldn't ever pick the hardest one, but let's get into it. So I'm going to move my chair out of the way so I have lots of space here to show you. Okay. I'm not going to use a mobility aid right now just because I'm going to be in the middle of the room and moving around, but you absolutely can use a mobility aid for any of these. So the first one is standing. So when you're doing standing marching, you're standing again, you can use a mobility aid. It could be a rollator, which is why I have two hands in front of me. It can be a cane, it could be trekking poles, it can be whatever you want. But you can use a mobility aid. But what your legs are doing is marching. So this is a standing march. And down, up, and down. Now, the slower you go, the more this is going to be challenging for balance versus hip flexor strength. So again, holding on to something if you need to. Now, I'm really exaggerating right now so you can tell what the movement is. But just so you know, this is also marching. This is the same exercise. This too is the same exercise. If that's all you can do, great. You're still marching. You're still activating your hip flexors. So that's the standing way to march and use your hip flexors. Seated is another option. So you can practice the marching exercise sitting up tall in any chair. It could be your kitchen chair, an office chair, a sofa or couch chair, your toilet, wherever. But sitting up tall, you can hold on to something if you need to, engage your belly muscles, and march from here. This is the same exercise that I was doing standing, but now I'm sitting. So this would be a seated march. Now, this is pretty challenging, and to be honest, for most people, this variation is the hardest. It's harder than standing typically because your hips are already bent at 90 degrees or so, and then you're bending your hip even further. Whereas when you're standing, your hips are straight and you're bending from there. So if this is too challenging, modify. You could modify by doing the standing option, or the next is seated reclined. So reclining back opens up the space in your hip more, and it's the same exercise from here, but this will likely be a little bit easier. So you're sitting and reclined. This is how you would do this exercise. Another option, so this is where we kind of get down to the floor. I'm going to do these on the floor. If you cannot safely stand up from the floor or confidently stand up from the floor, do not do these on the floor. You could do them on a bed or on a couch for the most part. So another option could be in what we call this hook lying position. So you're on your back, your knees are bent, feet are flat on the floor. Arms can be wherever it's comfortable for you. Engage your belly muscles and march. This is the same movement that I was doing, sitting and standing. I'm still marching with my hips. I'm bringing my knee up closer towards my face. So this is another option. Another version, we can do this side lying. So you can roll onto your side. I like to prop my head up. You can keep it down. That part is really up to you. But once you're here, there's two different ways that you can do this. Option number one is to march just your top leg and down. March and down. Option number two is to march both legs. So this hand up here can help you stay stable. You bring them up and down, up and down. But as always, you'd want to do both sides, because if I just do my top leg, then I need to switch sides to do my other top leg. Or even if I'm doing both sides, the bottom leg is doing most of the work. And so it would only be fair for me to switch sides and do whichever one I did, whether it was both legs or this one. So that would be the sideline version. You could do the hook lying. So that was this one, but with your feet up. So you can put your feet on your couch, on a chair, on something for support, and march from here. So this would be another option. There's two more options. These final two options for this specific exercise, you're not going to see a whole lot, and they're usually not my go-to options, but they are still options and would be good for other exercises. So I'm still going to show you them. One is quadruped. So that means I am on my hands and knees. My hands are underneath my shoulders. My knees are underneath my hips, and I would march from here. So again, this is very unlikely, but it would look like this. March. I'm still bringing my knee up towards my face. It's the same exercise, just in this quadruped position. And one thing that I do want to point out about this version is that while it looks odd and it's not the easiest, it is the most functional for anyone looking to improve their strength with standing up from the floor. Because one way, there's many ways, but one way to stand up from the floor is to bring one leg forward, and then you'd come here, and then you'd stand up from there. But what was that first step? We first had to bring our leg forward. That's this exact movement. And so while it is an odd one, it is a functional exercise. And then the last one, you're not going to be able to see a whole lot, but again, I do want to demonstrate. Let me turn around this way. So you're lying on your stomach, And you're going to bend one leg and you're going to push that knee down into the ground. So you're not going to see anything because the ground's not going to move, but you push down and relax and push and relax. So I'm still using my hip flexors. I still feel this right in here, but I'm pushing down. It's an isometric version of the exercise. And then of course you do the same thing on the other side. So lots of positions that you can modify in. And again, all of those was one exercise, just in all those different positions. All of those were marching. And so the trick is to find the one that works best for you. We could break down any exercise like that. Maybe we want to strengthen your hamstrings, or maybe we want to strengthen your ankle muscles, your core. Any exercise can be broken down by position. So that's one way that you can modify. Okay, so other ways that you can modify. So I demonstrated the different positions, but there's other ways that you can modify as well. So I just wanted to do a quick visual recap for you. So one would be less movement. So let's just stick with the marching exercise for now. The more I move, the harder it is. So if I'm trying to lift really high, that's going to be harder than if I'm just trying to lift here. So if you're trying to modify an exercise routine one way, don't move as much, don't lift as much. That is totally okay. It doesn't make the exercise any less than. Another option was speed. So oftentimes going slower is harder. If I try to really go slow, that is going to be so challenging, especially in standing, because now I'm standing on one leg for a longer amount of time as well. But even if I were sitting, it's still so much harder to go slow and down versus fast. Fast, you don't have to use the muscles for as long. So you could do fast and low. This is going to be so much easier than slow up and slow down. So you can change the speed based on what you're looking for. If you are looking to advance an exercise, slow it down. If you're looking to make it easier, go faster. And then the last thing I wanted to demonstrate was adding a pause or not. So an option to make an exercise harder would be to add a pause. So just get your leg up to wherever your goal is, pause, and lower. March, pause, lower. That's going to be harder than no pause or less of a pause. So if you're trying to modify an exercise, no pause, just up and down. Or instead of pausing for 1, 2, 3, you only pause for 1. 1. So there's a little bit of a pause or no pause. So those are some other strategies that you can use in any positions. I just chose standing for right now, but in any of those positions, you can choose to modify with any of those other techniques as well. So choose what feels right for you and your body. That's going to be the most important thing.